Gentlemen, are you waking up exhausted after what should have been a full night of sleep? Are you noticing that your energy through the day has a ceiling it didn't used to have? That the drive, the physical responsiveness, the confidence you used to carry without thinking about it has quietly faded? If any of that sounds familiar, I want you to stay with me, because what I'm about to share isn't a complicated protocol or an expensive stack of supplements. It is one vitamin taken at one specific time of day that the research shows can address all three of those problems at their shared biological root. I'm Dr. Fiona Gray, a board-certified urologist with over 12 years of experience helping men over 60 reclaim their potency, their physical vigor, and the kind of deep restorative sleep that makes everything else in a man's life work properly. I've worked with thousands of men who walked into my clinic convinced their best years were permanently behind them. And what I've seen again and again is that the gap between where they were and where their body was still capable of being came down to one correctable deficiency that nobody had taken the time to explain. Before we go any further, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now and drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I love knowing which men around the world are taking their health seriously enough to keep asking questions. That's exactly who this channel is built for. Now, gentlemen, let's talk about what is actually happening beneath the surface for most men over 50, because the standard explanation most men receive from their doctors stops several layers too shallow. You've been told it's aging. You've been told testosterone naturally drops, and there isn't much to be done about it. You've been told that disrupted sleep and reduced performance are simply the price of getting older. And here is what I want to challenge today. Not with false hope, but with evidence. That story is incomplete. And incomplete stories lead to men accepting a version of themselves they don't have to accept. There is a single nutrient that functions as a direct regulator of three separate biological systems in the male body after 50. The hormonal system that governs testosterone, the vascular system that governs circulation and sexual performance, and the neurological system that governs the depth and quality of sleep. When this nutrient is deficient, all three systems underperform at the same time. And after the age of 50, deficiency in this nutrient is not unusual. It is the statistical norm. Research consistently shows that more than 70% of men over 50 have levels that fall below the threshold needed for optimal hormonal and vascular function. That means if you're watching this video right now, the likelihood is that your body has been trying to run three critical systems on insufficient fuel. Not because of aging, not because of something you did wrong, but because of a gap in the foundation that nobody filled in. That nutrient is vitamin D3. And I want to go deeper on this with you than most videos do, because what D3 actually does in the body of a man over 50, particularly when taken at night, goes far beyond what most men have ever been told. Benefit number 1, D3 restores the hormonal signal that drives testosterone production, directly at the cellular level. Vitamin D3 is not a typical vitamin. In the body, it behaves as a steroid hormone. It travels through the bloodstream and binds to receptors inside the Leydig cells of the testes, the specialized cells whose sole function is to manufacture testosterone. When D3 is present at optimal levels, those cells receive a strong, clear signal and produce testosterone efficiently. When D3 is deficient, that signal weakens, production slows. Not because your body has lost the ability to make testosterone, but because it is missing the upstream trigger that initiates the process. A landmark study published in the journal Hormone and Metabolic Research followed men over 12 months and found that those who supplemented with vitamin D3 showed a significant, measurable increase in total testosterone compared to men who did not. This is not a secondary association or a statistical coincidence. This is a direct, documented, mechanistic link between a vitamin you can take tonight and the hormone that governs your energy, your drive, your confidence, and your potency. Low testosterone has a texture that men recognize even when they haven't named it correctly. It's the flatness, the reduced urgency, the sense that things that used to feel motivating, physical goals, intimacy, the forward momentum of daily life, now feel optional in a way they never did before. Many men I work with describe a quiet withdrawal from the parts of life that used to feel most alive. They don't connect it to a nutrient deficiency. They connect it to age, to stress, to circumstance. When testosterone responds to corrected D3 levels, what men describe is not dramatic. It's steady. It's the return of groundedness, of being inhabited in their own body again, of waking up with intention rather than inertia. Practically, the evidence supports a nightly dose of 3,000 to 5,000 IU of vitamin D3 in soft gel form taken with your evening meal. The soft gel format is important. D3 is fat-soluble, meaning it requires dietary fat to absorb efficiently, and a soft gel suspended in oil delivers meaningfully better absorption than a dry tablet or capsule. Taking it at dinner rather than breakfast aligns the absorption window with your highest dietary fat intake of the day, and, as we'll discuss in a moment, positions D3 to most directly support the brain's overnight regulatory processes. 8 to 12 weeks of consistent nightly use is the timeframe the research identifies for meaningful improvement in serum levels and hormonal response. I think of a patient named Edward, 66, a retired civil engineer who came to me frustrated in a specific way I recognize immediately. He said, "I'm not sick, my labs are all in range, but I don't feel like myself and nobody can tell me why." His testosterone was low normal, technically acceptable, but nowhere near the level at which a man his age could thrive. His vitamin D3 was critically deficient. We added nightly D3 supplementation with dinner. At 10 weeks, Edward came back in and sat down with a different energy. He said, "I didn't think a vitamin could do this, but the drive is back. My wife noticed before I said anything." What returned was the hormonal signal his body had been waiting months to receive. Benefit number 2. D3 taken at night actively supports the deep, restorative sleep most men over 50 have stopped expecting to get. Vitamin D3 receptors are distributed throughout the brain, including densely in the regions that govern circadian rhythm regulation, melatonin synthesis, and the transitions into deep, slow-wave sleep. Deep, slow-wave sleep, also called N3 sleep, is the stage where the body does its most essential overnight repair. Growth hormone is released primarily during this stage. Tissue is rebuilt. Inflammatory markers are cleared from the brain and body. The hormonal environment for the following day is established. When D3 is chronically deficient, the brain's ability to regulate these cycles is measurably disrupted. Research published in the journal Nutrients found a significant association between vitamin D deficiency and compromised sleep architecture, specifically, less time spent in deep, slow-wave sleep and more frequent nighttime waking. A man with deficient D3 is not just sleeping fewer hours, he is sleeping at a shallower depth, consistently missing the stage of sleep where his body would otherwise be actively restoring everything he wants restored: vascular function, hormonal balance, cellular repair, physical recovery. The emotional weight of chronic poor sleep is something men underestimate until it lifts. It erodes patience. It compresses the emotional bandwidth available for relationships, for work, for the quiet satisfaction of a day well lived. Many of the men I see have normalized waking up unrefreshed so completely that they've stopped remembering what the alternative felt like. When D3 levels are restored and sleep architecture begins to recover, the change men describe most often is not that they sleep more hours, it's that the hours they sleep finally do something. They wake up and feel like they've actually rested. Taking D3 at night is specifically relevant here in a way that morning dosing is not. The brain regions with the highest density of D3 receptors are the same regions governing overnight regulatory function, and evening supplementation appears to more directly support those processes. Consistent nightly use over 6 to 8 weeks is associated in multiple studies with improvements in sleep onset time, sleep continuity, and the proportion of time spent in deep restorative stages. This is the compounding benefit that most men discussing D3 never mention. The same supplement supporting your hormonal output during the day is actively working to restore the quality of your sleep through the night. I remember James, 73, a man who described his sleep as something he had simply made peace with. He said, "I haven't slept through the night in 4 years. I assumed that was just how it goes." His D3 level was among the lowest I've measured in a man his age. After 8 weeks of nightly supplementation, James came back in and told me something that stayed with me. He said, "I woke up last Tuesday and I didn't know what time it was because I hadn't been awake since I fell asleep. I can't remember the last time that happened." His sleep architecture had begun to recover. The deep stages were returning, and everything else, his mood, his energy, his engagement with his wife and his life, was following. Benefit number 3. D3 restores the vascular function that makes both performance and physical vigor biologically possible. This is the connection that ties everything in this video together, and it is the one most men have never heard explained. Vitamin D3 binds to receptors within the endothelial cells lining the inside of every blood vessel in your body, and directly regulates the production of endothelial nitric oxide synthase, the enzyme responsible for generating nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the signaling molecule that tells blood vessels to relax and dilate, to open wide and allow blood to flow freely into every tissue that depends on it. It is the primary biological mechanism behind healthy erectile function. It is also the mechanism behind healthy circulation to muscles, to the brain, to every organ and tissue involved in physical performance and recovery. After 50, nitric oxide production naturally declines. D3 deficiency accelerates that decline significantly. A study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine found that men with vitamin D deficiency had substantially higher rates of erectile dysfunction, not as a consequence of psychology or general aging, but as a direct consequence of compromised endothelial signaling at the cellular level. This is a vascular problem, and it has a vascular solution. Compromised circulation has a feeling that goes beyond the physical. It is the erosion of confidence that comes from a body that has stopped being predictably reliable. Many men dealing with vascular-related performance issues withdraw from intimacy not because desire has diminished, but because they no longer trust their body to respond consistently. That withdrawal compounds. It affects relationships, self-perception, and the willingness to engage fully with life. When D3 levels are corrected and endothelial function begins to recover, men consistently describe one thing above all others: the return of confidence. Not performance as a goal in itself, but the quiet assurance of a body they can trust again. Practically, the same nightly D3 dose that supports testosterone and sleep is the dose that supports vascular endothelial function. There is one important addition here, and that is vitamin K2 in the MK7 form, taken alongside your D3 every night. D3 increases calcium absorption. K2 activates the proteins that direct that calcium into bones and away from arterial walls. Without K2, supplemental D3 can contribute over time to the arterial calcification that stiffens vessels and further restricts blood flow. Together, D3 and K2 form a biological partnership, one that improves vascular elasticity, supports hormonal signaling, and creates the circulatory environment in which both deep sleep and sexual function become possible again. Take 100 to 200 micrograms of K2 MK7 alongside your D3 with dinner every night. These two work as a team. Quick pause before we continue, because I want to make sure the picture is complete before we move to your action plan. What I've described today is not a collection of separate benefits from a single vitamin. It is one interconnected biological system, hormonal, vascular, and neurological, that D3 regulates at the foundational level. When D3 is deficient, all three degrade together. When D3 is restored, all three recover together. That is why men who correct this deficiency don't just sleep better, or just perform better, or just feel more energetic. They experience a shift across all three simultaneously, because all three were being limited by the same upstream gap. Here is your simple action plan. Tonight, with dinner, begin taking 3,000 to 5,000 IU of vitamin D3 in soft gel form alongside 100 to 200 micrograms of vitamin K2 in the MK7 form. Take both with your largest meal of the day to maximize fat-soluble absorption. Do this every night. Consistency over 8 to 12 weeks is where the research shows meaningful, measurable change. Have your vitamin D serum levels tested at baseline and again at the 3-month mark. The optimal range for men over 50 is 50 to 80 nanograms per milliliter. That is the range the research associates with the strongest hormonal, vascular, and sleep benefits. That is it. 2 supplements, 1 meal every night. I want to speak to you directly for a moment. If you have been frustrated, if you have tried things that didn't work, accepted explanations that didn't fully satisfy you, or quietly started to believe that the version of yourself you remember is simply gone, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not simply old. You may be operating on an incomplete biological foundation, and that is not a failure of effort or discipline or character. It is a correctable deficiency. The research on vitamin D3 and male health after 50 is not fringe science. It is peer-reviewed, replicated, and clinically meaningful. Your body has more capacity for restoration, for potency, for vigor, for the deep, uninterrupted sleep that makes a man feel like himself, than the story you've been living inside. The evidence supports that, and so do I. If this video gave you something real today, a piece of the picture that was missing, give it a like so other men can find it. Drop a comment below telling me which of the 3 areas matters most to you right now: sleep, energy, or performance. Your answer helps me know exactly what to cover next. Share this with a man in your life who has accepted decline as a verdict, because it is not a verdict. It is a starting point. And subscribe so you never miss what I share each week for men who are still choosing to fight for their health. I'm Dr. Fiona Gray, reminding you that after 50, vitality isn't lost. The research shows it is genuinely, biologically within reach. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.